Jace Rowan wasn't a fan of thin walls, especially not when the guy next door had a voice like that. Smooth. Warm. Just the right amount of husky in the mornings. It was the kind of voice that lingered, one that you could imagine whispering right into the hollow of your throat if you let your thoughts go far enough. And Jace had. A few times too many, actually. He didn't even know the guy's name. Not officially. But he'd learned the rhythms of his life. The 2 a.m. recording sessions. The late-night laughter. The way he sang softly in the shower when he thought no one was listening. He was always talking, reading something dramatic, ranting to a friend over the phone, or just existing out loud. It drove Jace crazy. Not because it was annoying, because it was tempting, dangerously so. He was supposed to enjoy the quiet. His whole job revolved around curating silence, sculpting sound. But lately, the presence behind the wall had become part of his life. Uninvited, unavoidable, addictive. Tonight was one of those nights. Jace sat on the couch, one leg draped over the other, a whiskey glass in hand, pretending he wasn't listening again. But the voice was there, low, playful. "Try it again," the guy said on the other side of the wall. Softer, just at the edge of a whisper. Jace tilted his head. Another voice followed, higher, flustered. A friend, maybe? A client? Definitely not the neighbor. That voice was unmistakable. Then laughter. That laughter. Jace took a sip of whiskey and stared at the blank TV screen. He felt a little crazy, eavesdropping like a voyeur. But hell, he didn't even need to lean in. The walls in this building were a joke. And tonight, something about that laughter hit differently. It sounded close, not just in distance. Close to something else. Something warmer. Something that curled heat under his skin. He sighed and stood, pacing toward the shared wall, stopping just short of it like he had dozens of times before. He pressed his fingers to the plaster, not hard, just enough to feel the faint vibrations of the voice still lingering on the other side. What was he doing? He needed to stop this. He needed to go out, meet people, live a life that didn't revolve around the sound of a stranger's voice filtering through the damn drywall. But when that voice came again, this time lower, tired, a soft exhale followed by the sound of bedsheets shifting, Jace closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against the wall, and whispered, "Who the hell are you?" It started as a whisper. No words, just the ragged edge of breath barely audible through the thin stretch of drywall between Jace's bedroom and the one next door. He paused. At first he thought it was feedback from his headset. He pulled it off, pressed his palm to the wall, and listened. A soft inhale. A shaky exhale. Silence. Then a sound so fragile it made his chest ache. A muffled sob. Jace sat back slowly on his bed. Breath held. He didn't mean to listen. Not really. But it was impossible not to. The paper-thin construction of this building turned privacy into performance. And right now, Micah, because, yes, Jace had finally learned his name, was breaking, just a few inches away. He imagined Micah curled on the bed, voice buried in a pillow. Or maybe he was sitting upright, trying to keep it in, fists clenched, eyes red. Jace swallowed hard. It wasn't the first time he'd heard emotion leak through the wall. Micah was expressive, laughing, cursing, talking to friends at all hours. But this was different. This was loneliness. Raw and quiet and so very real. And it made Jace feel like a ghost on the other side. He lay down, staring up at the ceiling. The sound stopped eventually, replaced by the creak of the mattress, the rustle of sheets. Jace let his eyes drift shut, but his body remained tense, coiled with something between guilt and desire. He wanted to comfort him. He didn't even know why. Micah was a stranger, a voice, a presence, a rhythm of life that had become tangled in Jace's own. But tonight, he felt more real than anything. The next morning, Jace found a note under his door. "Hey, sorry if I was loud last night. Didn't mean to keep you up. M." The handwriting was casual, a little messy, Blue ink on torn notebook paper. Jay stared at it for a long time. He didn't even know what he wanted to write back. He wasn't good at people. Not anymore. But he found himself picking up a pen anyway, scribbling on the back of the same note. Didn't keep me up. You okay? He slid it under Micah's door and walked away before he could think too much about it. That night there was no crying. Only laughter. Soft and sleepy, followed by a single line, spoken just above a whisper. Thanks, neighbor. It wasn't meant to be heard, but Jace heard it, and for the first time in a long time he smiled. The next time Jace saw Micah, it wasn't planned. He just stepped out to grab his mail. Barefoot, hoodie on, hair still damp from a post-work shower when the apartment door across the hall swung open. Out came a blur of messy auburn curls and a hoodie several sizes too big. Micah. He was real. More real than the imagined face Jace had built up in fragments. Laughs, sighs, sleepy murmurs. This version was better. Warmer. Their eyes met. Micah blinked, then smiled. It wasn't a flashy smile. Just a gentle curve of the mouth, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to give more. Jace froze for a heartbeat too long before nodding once, sharp and awkward. Hey, Micah said, tilting his head. You're... ... quote. Jace, he said. His voice came out lower than usual. Micah's smile deepened. Right. Jace from 7B, I've been meaning to say thanks. For the note. That was really kind. You seemed like you needed someone to ask. Silence stretched, comfortable and strange. Micah glanced at the mail in Jace's hands. Bills? Mostly. Jace paused. And a coupon for 50% off a pizza I didn't order? That's fate, Micah said. Obviously. He stepped closer, just enough for Jace to notice the faint scent of cinnamon and something sweet. Maybe he'd been baking again. Sorry about the noise sometimes, Micah added. My mic picks up everything, and I forget that the walls here are basically paper. I don't mind the noise. That came out too fast. Too sincere. Micah blinked. Jace cleared his throat. I mean, I don't work nights, so it's not a problem. Micah's cheeks pinked faintly, and for one absurd second, Jace wondered what it would be like to kiss him. Right here, in the hallway. Instead, Micah gave a little wave and turned to unlock his door. Well, if you ever want 50% off pizza, I'm usually home. The door clicked shut behind him. Jace stared for a long moment, heart thudding just under the surface. Then he walked back to his apartment, mail forgotten, adrenaline humming. Micah had smiled at him, spoken his name, and now he was real in a way Jace wasn't sure he was ready for. It started with a whisper. Again, but this time it wasn't tears. It was a voice Micah's low, breathy, muttering something under his breath. Too quiet to catch it first. Then, yeah, just like that. Jace froze. He'd been sitting at his desk, editing reverb layers on a soundscape, when the first sounds filtered through the wall. The kind that made his breath catch and his pulse trip over itself. A soft sigh. A rustle of sheets. Then a quiet moan, just barely audible. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. He should have turned on music. Closed the door. Anything but this. But instead, he leaned slightly forward, like gravity itself had a line to pull him closer. God, I shouldn't be thinking about him. Jace's heart slammed into his ribs. Was it? No. Couldn't be. Another breath. Another whisper. Jace. This time the name wasn't casual. It came out like a confession, like the slip of a truth he didn't mean to say out loud. Jace jerked away from the wall like it had burned him. His ears rang. His throat was dry. He didn't know what he was supposed to do with that. Not just the sounds, but the fact that Micah was saying his name like that. With heat. With want. And he was alone. That voice, those breaths. Micah wasn't with someone. That much was clear. Jace sat in the silence that followed, hands shaking slightly. He'd never felt more like a voyeur, Never felt more wanted either. It was wrong. It was invasive. It was... God, it was hot. He ran a hand over his face and cursed under his breath. Tomorrow, he'd pretend none of it happened. Tonight, though, he wasn't sure he could pretend anything at all. The knock came just past midnight. 3 light taps. Hesitant. Like the person on the other side wasn't sure if they really wanted to be heard. Jace was awake. Of course he was. He'd been staring at the ceiling for over an hour, haunted by the sound of Micah's voice from earlier. The way he'd said his name, the way it lingered, heavy with desire and regret. He opened the door slowly. Micah stood barefoot in his hoodie and flannel pants, hair messy and face flushed. Not from sleep, Jace realized, but from nerves. "Hey," Micah said. "Sorry. Is this weird?" "Little bit," Jace admitted. Micah gave a breathless laugh. "Fair. I just couldn't sleep, and I kept thinking about what I said. Or what you might have heard." Jace didn't answer. Micah shifted his weight. "I know the walls are thin. I've known for a while. And I didn't mean to. I didn't think you were listening, but I guess I kind of hoped you were." That stunned Jace into silence. Micah continued, voice softer now. "Look, if this is too much, if it's just been weird, I can go." "No," Jace said, stepping aside. "Come in." Micah blinked. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Micah stepped inside. The air between them thickened immediately. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Then Micah's voice, soft as the first crack of thunder before the rain. "Do you ever think about it? Us?" Jace didn't speak, but his eyes said it all. And Micah... God, Micah closed the gap like it hurt not to. The kiss was slow. Soft at first. Testing. But then Jace's hand tangled in Micah's curls, and everything turned sharper, deeper, hotter. Months of tension, of proximity, of listening through walls, collapsed in that moment. Micah gasped against his mouth. "I can't stop thinking about you." "Then don't," Jace breathed. And just like that, the space between them ceased to exist. The world faded down to breath and skin. Micah's hoodie hit the floor first. Jace's fingers trembled against bare skin, finding warmth and softness in the hitch of a breath that wasn't his. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Every moment of silence they'd spent on opposite sides of the wall was unraveling here, piece by piece, shirt by shirt. Jace's mouth found Micah's collarbone. Then his neck. He tasted like sleep and cinnamon and something deeper, something that made Jace's grip tighten on his waist. Micah moaned softly, fingers trailing up Jace's chest, leaving goosebumps in their wake. "I didn't think you'd want this." "I've been trying not to," Jace said, voice raw. Micah leaned back just enough to meet his eyes. "Then stop trying." The words were a permission and a plea. Jace kissed him like he'd drown if he didn't. They moved through the apartment like a storm, bumping into walls, breathless laughter mixing with sighs and whispered names. The couch caught them. So did the floor. Eventually, the bed. Clothes vanished. Hesitations melted. And what remained was heat and friction, the press of skin on skin, the unspoken ache finally finding form. Micah was all softness and need. Jace was all restraint unraveling. There was nothing hurried, nothing rushed, just the slow, devastating realization that this wasn't just lust. It wasn't just curiosity. This was years of loneliness folding in on itself. And by the time Micah arched under him, fingers curled in the sheets, whispering Jace's name like a prayer. Jace knew. This wasn't going to be casual. Not anymore. They lay tangled in silence afterward, sweat cooling on their skin, the city hum drifting in through the half-open window. Micah spoke first, voice small. That wasn't just a one-time thing, was it? Jace turned his head, brushing their hands together. "No," he said. "God, no." Micah smiled. Small, sleepy, a little afraid. Jace reached over and took his hand fully this time. "I think I started falling for you before I even knew what you looked like." Micah's breath caught. and for the first time there were no walls between them at all. The sunlight was rude. Jace blinked awake slowly, his head pressed against a bare shoulder that smelled faintly of warm linen and something sweeter. For a moment, he didn't move. Micah was still asleep beside him, lips parted slightly, cheeks smushed against the pillow. And they were still tangled together, bare, close. It wasn't a dream. Jace stared at the ceiling, the sharp awareness of everything settling over him like a second blanket. The way Micah had whispered his name, the way his voice had cracked when he'd come apart in his arms, the way he'd clung to him after. It hadn't just been sex. It hadn't been simple either. Micah stirred beside him. A soft groan. A stretch. Then sleepy green eyes blinked open and locked onto Jace's. "Shit," Micah whispered, blinking harder. "You're real," Jace smirked. "Unfortunately." Micah stared at him for another second, then buried his face in Jace's shoulder with a groan. "Okay, now it feels real." Jace's heart did something stupid. They lay in silence for a moment. Not the kind that needed filling, but the kind that dared them to speak. "Was that?" Micah started, voice muffled. "Yeah," Jace said. "You don't even know what I was going to ask." "Doesn't matter." "It wasn't nothing." Micah turned his face just enough for their eyes to meet again. "No, it really wasn't." And there it was again, that quiet gravity between them. But reality still lingered at the edge of the bed, and Jace could feel it pressing in, the what now, the what if, the what are we. Micah must have felt it too. "You don't have to figure it out yet," he said softly, as if reading Jace's thoughts. Jace swallowed. "I kinda want to, though." Micah reached out, fingertips tracing the curve of Jace's jaw. "Then we'll figure it out. Just slowly." "Yeah?" Jace nodded. "Yeah." It wasn't a grand promise, but it was a start. Jace hadn't meant to follow Micah to the cafe, but Micah had offered, tentatively, hopefully, and Jace, against all his usual instincts, had said yes. Now he sat across from him, at a corner table, the morning bustle of the city bleeding in through the windows, sunlight catching in Micah's curls. Micah looked relaxed. Easy. Laughing with the barista, grinning over his coffee cup. Jace, on the other hand, felt like he'd been dropped into someone else's life. Here, Micah wasn't the voice through the wall or the body tangled with his in sleep. He was a person, in the world, warm and social and infuriatingly charming. And Jace? He felt exposed. Micah stirred his coffee and glanced up. "You okay?" "Yeah. Just not used to daylighting people." Micah grinned. "You're doing great. Not even glaring at anyone yet." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Yet." Micah's smile faded slightly, but not in a bad way. He leaned in a little, voice quieter. "This is weird for me, too." Jace blinked. "You don't seem like it. That's because I've been thinking about this for months." Micah stirred his coffee slower now. "What it would be like to talk to you, to look at you, Micah. I thought maybe I'd built you up in my head, that it wasn't real. But it is, and that scares the hell out of me." Jace sat back, exhaling slowly. He wasn't used to honesty coming that easily. He'd spent so long behind emotional soundproofing, he'd forgotten what it was like when someone saw him. Really saw him. Micah reached across the table, fingers brushing Jace's. "We don't have to label anything. Not yet. But if you want to do this, I'm all in." Jace looked at their hands, then back at Micah, and nodded, because despite the fear and the unfamiliarity, the truth was simple. He wanted more. More late-night whispers. More morning coffee. More of this, whatever it was becoming. The second time was different. Not rushed. Not urgent. Not soaked in months of longing, like the first. This time, Jace invited Micah over after a late dinner and too many accidental brushes of hands. He didn't even pretend it was casual. Micah stepped inside with that same look he'd had the morning after. Hopeful? Nervous? Sure. They didn't say much. The silence spoke for them. Micah moved first, lifting his hand to Jace's cheek like he'd been aching to do it for hours. His thumb brushed just beneath Jace's eye. "You always look so serious," he murmured. Jace leaned into the touch. "Maybe I've just never had a reason not to be." Micah's smile was soft, and then his lips were on Jace's, slow and searching. "Not claiming, just asking." Jace answered. They moved to the bedroom, hands tangled in clothes, but they didn't strip each other down all at once. This time, they paused between kisses, murmured things, laughed when they bumped into the dresser, kissed again. Micah pushed Jace gently onto the bed and climbed over him, fingers ghosting down his chest. Jace reached up and dragged him into another kiss, deeper this time, more open, more vulnerable. "Tell me if I go too far," Micah said against his mouth. "You won't." And he didn't. Micah was all patience and pressure, slow rolls of his hips, gasps that bloomed into moans, and lips that wandered like they were memorizing every inch of Jace's skin. They moved together like they'd done it 1,000 times. Like this had always been coming. The tension from before hadn't disappeared. It had just evolved into something more intimate. When Jace finally came apart, breathless and clinging to Micah's back, he didn't feel empty. He felt held. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, facing each other, legs intertwined. Micah whispered, "You okay?" Jace reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind his ear. "Yeah," he said. "I think I'm better than okay." A week passed. They didn't label anything. No big declarations. Just morning texts and shared coffee, late-night kisses and quiet smiles when they passed each other in the hall. But something shifted. Jace caught himself listening for Micah's laughter, not through the wall, but from the living room. And Micah stopped pretending his feet just happened to lead him to Jace's door every night. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Micah lay curled against Jace's chest, tracing idle lines on his arm. He was quiet, too quiet. Jace brushed his fingers through Micah's curls. "Talk to me." Micah hesitated. Then, "What are we doing?" Jace froze. Micah kept tracing. "Because I know what I'm doing. I'm falling. Fast. And it scares me, because I didn't mean to. I just wanted to say hi to my cute neighbor, not end up sleeping in his bed every night, wondering if he wants me here." Silence. Micah turned his face into Jace's shoulder. "I'm sorry. That was a lot." "No," Jace said, voice rough. That was honest. He sat up slightly, making Micah look at him. "I've never been good at this. At people. Feelings. But I'm not confused about you." Micah's eyes searched his. "Then say it." Jace exhaled slowly. "I don't want you to leave. I want you here. I want the late night talking. The walls not meaning anything anymore. I want you." Micah's smile broke slowly across his face, soft, disbelieving, and unbearably bright. "You really were listening all that time, huh?" Jace leaned in and kissed him, slow and deep. "I still am," he murmured. Every breath, every word. They curled together under the blankets as the rain kept falling, and for the first time in years, Jace wasn't afraid of what came next. Because the wall that had once kept them apart, it was gone now, and in its place, something real, something warm, something that sounded a lot like love.